Hello, welcome to Paint Talk, the weekly show where I sit, have a cup of coffee, and just kind of talk about oil painting. If you're new to the channel, then welcome to Paint Coach. My name is Chris Fornatero, and I'm here to help simplify oil painting so that you can get better faster. So today we're going to talk about why your paintings are not getting better, why they're not improving. Now, the answer to that is that you're not correctly identifying the problems in your paintings. Because when you can correctly identify the problems in your paintings, then you can figure out what skills you're lacking that are creating those problems. Then you can come up with a plan to better those skills so you don't keep making the same mistakes. I feel that so many young painters, myself included, back when I first started out, don't take the time to really assess their work and to diagnose things that they're not good at and then work on those. And just through painting a lot, all your skills will naturally rise. But when you take the time to focus just on one skill, you can bring that one skill up a lot faster. It's like if you were a baseball player and your fielding was a lot better than your hitting, but you never took the time to specifically work on just your hitting skills. And you thought, oh, I'll just keep playing baseball and naturally I'll get better at fielding and hitting at the same time, which is true. But if you take the time just to focus on your batting, you can improve that a lot quicker. Now you're probably thinking, Chris, like, how am I going to identify the problems of my painting? If I could have done that already, I would have done it and I would have fixed everything. Well, I can guarantee you that whatever is not working in your paintings stems from a lack of understanding of one or many of the fundamentals. These are things like color, value, drawing, and simplification. I know it probably seems like I talk about these in every single one of my videos, but that's because they are that important. And I know a lot of you are probably saying, like, no, Chris, it's not that easy. My problems are way more complicated than just the fundamentals. I assure you they are not. No matter what problems you think you're having, it can all be simplified into not understanding one of those basic fundamental concepts. If you don't quite understand what I'm talking about right now, let me give you some examples. So if you're like trying to do portraits and you just can't get a likeness and you can never seem to get the features in the right place and the right size, and whenever you do a portrait, it just doesn't look like the person, that's because you need to work on the fundamental of drawing. If you're trying to paint landscapes and you look at a scene and there's trees and water and land and mountains and sky and clouds and all that, and thought of putting all that into one landscape seems very intimidating and complex, then you need to work on simplification. If you look at a landscape and see green grass and green leaves and green bushes, and you're like, how am I going to mix up these very subtle different color greens? I'm all confused. Then you need to work on color. Now, for most people, it's going to be pretty easy for you to identify which of the fundamentals you are lacking in. But if you're struggling and you can't identify what you're doing wrong in your paintings, like you look at your paintings and you think, oh, they just look off, but I can't identify what is off about them, then I suggest doing this exercise. Take whatever, that painting is that you can't identify what the problems are in it, and paint it again, but paint it in 30 minutes. Put a timer on yourself and paint it and force yourself to paint in 30 minutes. Now, it's not going to turn out to be a good painting or anything, but all of your weaknesses are going to rise to the surface. It's going to become very apparent what you struggle with. And honestly, everybody's going to have more than one fundamental that they're lacking in, but just choose one and focus on that. Okay, so you figured out which of the fundamentals you're lacking in, and now it's time to practice at it. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to have direct practice with that fundamental. We want to cut away all the fluff and any excess stuff that has to deal with painting and focus as much time just on that one concept and fundamental. It's very hard to learn when you're trying to learn multiple things. You don't want to be trying to learn color and value and simplification and drawing all at the same time. It's best when you can zero in on one, focus on that, get that down, and then move on to another. For example, if you're struggling with your portraits because your lack of drawing skills, I suggest getting some pencil and paper and start drawing portraits that way. Doing that, you're going to get rid of color. You're not going to have to be dealing with color. You're not going to have to be dealing with the physical nature of oil paints if that's something else that you struggle with. You're also going to be able to move a lot quicker. It's going to be a lot easier for you to get a lot of reps when you're just drawing it. And now, for example, if you really struggle with drawing, your drawing skills just really aren't there, you might even have to start more simple than portraits. Maybe you're going to be just drawing still lifes or just some other less complicated subject. Don't be afraid to get very simple with this. Now, for example, if you were struggling with landscapes and simplifying your landscapes, I would recommend doing very small landscape studies, little 6 by 6 inch studies with a big brush, very little detail. Again, you'll be able to knock those out in like 30 to 40 minutes. Let's think of it this way, like the opposite of that is doing a full-blown, 18 by 24 inch landscape to practice. And yes, you will learn doing that for sure. But one, it's going to take you a whole lot longer to learn the same things that you would learn doing a little 40-minute 6 by 6 inch study. Because if your problem is simplifying a landscape, the bulk of learning is going to happen in the first half of the landscape. And if you're doing a big 18 by 24, you're going to be spending so much time just covering the entire canvas with paint, developing these big areas, putting in details, and that's not really what you're struggling with. You're struggling with the beginning stages. You're struggling looking at a scene and simplifying it into 4, 5, 6 shapes. So we want as much direct practice with that part of the process as much as possible. Now, I think that no matter what your problem is, I feel that a lot of the times doing a very simple still life study is the best thing that you can do. I know this might sound crazy, but you can get great practice with any of the fundamentals with just an apple sitting on a table. If you think, oh no, that's way too easy, I could do that. Well, I challenge you, like really think about how good you're painting that still life. Are your colors perfect? Are your values perfect? Your drawing perfect? I feel like every single time I go and do still lifes for a little bit, when I come back to my portraits or landscapes, I'm just so much better. Because painting, a very simple still life, it's so stripped down and to the point that your weaknesses are very clear. It's, oh, I totally did not draw that correctly, or oh, I'm really struggling matching this color, or I just can't get the correct form here. I'm not understanding the planes and the form and the shape. Like I promise you, if you do 5 very simple still life studies in a row, when you come back to your portraits, landscape, or whatever it is that you're painting, you will be a lot better. Now, another way of going about this is to paint the same thing over and over. Now, I understand that a lot of people could get bored of this or it doesn't sound that exciting, but if you can get past that and do that, you will definitely see results in your painting, because you're pretty much doing the same thing as the other method I was talking about before, which is when you paint a subject over and over, one pass you're going to figure out something about the colors. Maybe the next pass it's, oh, I'm understanding the values more. The next pass, the drawing, so on and so forth. So you're still kind of focusing on one element, and every time you paint it, you're using the element that you learned in your previous pass on it, so you don't have to focus on that as much, and you can focus on something else. Like I just saw this happen with one of my one-on-one students. He kept painting the same portrait over and over just because he got in his head, like, I really want to get this right. And through doing it over and over, he had a really big breakthrough with his portrait painting. He understood what I was talking about the whole time with the fundamentals and understanding what makes the painting work. It was really interesting hearing him talk about it, because he would say, yeah, Chris, like I'd always hear you talking about the fundamentals and I always wouldn't really let it sink in, and I would think, oh no, like my problems are more complicated than just understanding the fundamentals. But now after having that breakthrough, he realizes that it was the fundamentals this whole time, and it was pretty surprising to him that such a big solution and discovery was something so simple. And if you keep practicing, a lot of the times your big breakthroughs and your big discoveries with paintings where something just clicks and you get a lot better, a lot of the times it's going to be something very simple and you're going to go, wow, like I can't believe I didn't figure that out earlier. A big part of painting is the application of the paint onto the canvas and how you do that, but I feel a bigger part is just how you see things. And so much, for me at least, of times that I've seen a big jump of improvement is when I changed the way I saw things. When I could look at a scene differently, when I could see something and understand what's making that scene work. What are the important things happening here? What are the value relationships? What are the big shapes? My physical ability to paint it didn't change. It's just how I looked at it. I could see it and know what is important and what's not. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you can take the things I talked about here, do them yourself, see some improvement, and have some fun. Now, if you're looking for some good in-depth step-by-step instruction, highly recommend my Foundations of Oil Painting course. Put a link to that in the description below. Also down there is my Patreon page where I have full painting video tutorials. And if you want to see what I'm painting on a daily basis, you can follow me on Instagram at Forza43. I'm Chris Fornatero here telling you to go get painting.